You may be wondering, why the new glasses? Well... Movies are inherently a collaborative art. A painter paints, a novelist writes, but a movie? There are scores of individuals, writers, directors, actors, hair and makeup artists, visual effects artists, set dressers, prop people, sound mixers, DPs and camera operators, and so on, that all do their part to make the magic of cinema work. But sometimes there are those directors that are so unique, so specific, that their films have personalities of their own, and their visions so powerful that the work of art is essentially theirs. This idea that a film's director applies a highly centralized and subjective control, making them equivalent to the author of a novel, is called the auteur theory. The term came about from a 1954 article in the French magazine of Cahiers du Cinéma, and it rose to prominence in America in the 1970s and 80s, with filmmakers like Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, George Lucas, and Francis Ford Coppola. There are many critiques to the auteur theory, as it takes away the hard work that everyone else in the cast and crew put into the film, and touts the laurels of the single filmmaker. And that in the vast pantheon of so-called auteurs, female directors are rarely represented. However, when people watch films from filmmakers such as Quentin Tarantino, Catherine Bigelow, Jordan Peele, and Greta Gerwig, Gerwig absolutely belongs here. Her command of cinematic storytelling unequivocally validates her as an auteur. People can absolutely tell that their films have a singular vision, narratively, aesthetically, and philosophically. While I personally don't believe that a movie can be ascribed to a singular author, there is one filmmaker that puzzles me, intrigues me. As Benoit Blanc would put it,
compels me.
He has made some of the most groundbreaking movies of all time, and arguably the greatest action movie ever, full of guts, gore, and BDSM outfits. He has also made films that are family-friendly, wholesome, and weirdly fun. In both his R-rated and G-rated films, his personality and storytelling shines through. So I have to figure it out. I want to know how this one filmmaker can implement wildly different tones in his films, but still have his vision seep through. The filmmaker I'm talking about is George Miller. Smells like the Barbie. Smells like kangaroo piss. George Miller is an Australian filmmaker who came to prominence with his 1979 film Mad Max. After working as an emergency room doctor in Sydney, Miller wanted to make a movie that realistically depicted some of the injuries and deaths he would see during his rounds. So he made this super low-budget action film starring pre-shitbag status Mel Gibson, where many of his typical post-apocalyptic visions are more toned down than you might expect. There's no BDSM outfits, there's no metal codpiece, and sadly, There is no doof warrior and no flame-throwing electric guitar. But there is a sexually ambiguous biker gang who, after murdering his wife and son, make the title character of Max Rokotansky mad. The techniques he used to bring his vision to life are cranking up the frame rate so it seems like things are moving faster than they actually are, close-ups of wheels driving on cars, putting the camera in incredibly dangerous places, and showing mangled bodies of people after car accidents. It's a slower film than you'd expect from him, but I dig it. His career continued with Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior in 1981, and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome in 1985. After finishing his original Max trilogy, he directed the 1987 film Witches of Eastwick, and the 1992 film Lorenzo's Oil. Then, Miller takes a turn. He goes into family films, with writing 1995's Talking Pig movie Babe, and directing the sequel, 1998's Babe, Pig in the City. After directing animated dancing penguins in the Happy Feet movies, Miller returned to where his career started, directing arguably the most concise version of his vision with 2015's Mad Max Fury Road. Now, that's a wide expanse of films. Most filmmakers primarily stick to one genre: action, horror, drama, comedy, but George Miller's done it all. And because of his expansive filmography, one can reasonably make the argument that Miller single-handedly influenced an entire continent of filmmakers. Like David Michôd, whose 2014 film The Rover was clearly influenced by the Mad Max movies, setting in a post-apocalyptic world, following a guy and his car. Greg McLean, with his Wolf Creek films, pushing the envelope for on-screen gore that Miller pioneered back in the 70s. And even John Dwiegen, whose 1991 film Flirting, starring a young Tandaway Newton and a child version of the guy who cut off Jamie Lannister's hand, was produced by Miller himself. With such an eclectic body of work, one could wonder, or at least I wonder, what is a George Miller film? Is it cars and leather? Is it dancing penguins? Is it trying very hard to find a cure for your son's rare ailment before he goes into a vegetative state and most likely dies? Lorenzo's Oil sounds like a barrel of laughs. Now, in order to figure out what makes a George Miller film a George Miller film, I'm going to dissect two of his most critically acclaimed works with vastly different audience demographics to see where we can find who is George Miller, the filmmaker, and where his DNA shows up in these movies. Those two films are Mad Max Fury Road and Babe, Pig in the City. Some of you might be asking, why Babe, Pig in the City? Firstly, it's rated G, and it is the furthest away from Mad Max Fury Road in tone, or at least it would seem. Secondly, while it was a box office failure in its time, the late Gene Siskel, famed film critic of the Chicago Tribune, called it his choice for best movie of 1998. And his better half, the late Roger Ebert, gave the film 4 out of 4 stars, calling it more magnificent than the original Babe. If you're familiar with these two, whenever they agree on a specific movie, you should pay attention. And thirdly, and probably most importantly, it was on HBO Max, and this pandemic has gotten me watching some pretty interesting stuff. I went into Babe, Pig in the City knowing that I had seen the movie when I was younger, but also equating it to Homeward Bound 2: Lost in San Francisco. But an hour and a half after watching the film, boy was I wrong. Rather than being a second-rate sequel to a beloved children's film, I found that this thing bops. It's the weirdest children's movie that I've ever seen, and this is directly attributable to George Miller, as his cinematic fingerprints are all over this movie. I'm going to be breaking down the discussions of these two films into multiple topics: aesthetics, side characters, action set pieces, and what I'm going to be calling the George Miller hero. And for the record, I am going to be spoiling the hell out of both of these movies, along with probably other George Miller films. This is my third video doing it. You know what you're getting into, or you should. So if you would like to not be spoiled, go watch them and then come back, and this can be like a little sort of book club or something. And if not, watch me talk for another 20 minutes or so. I don't know. Ugh. Australia needs better beers that are known to a international audience. Oh. Now, what is a George Miller hero? It is a character who, at the start of the story, has a simple goal that can be viewed as self-serving. Oh my god. But through outside forces of the story, the protagonist becomes part of a group, at first reluctantly, doing tasks for this group out of their own self-interest, only to change through the course of the film to becoming the radical champion of said group, transforming into an agent that betters the uncaring, chaotic world around them. This can primarily be seen in The Road Warrior, where, at the beginning of the film, all Max wants is gas. But through Max's journey, he decides to defend the group from the Ayatollah of rock and rolla, Lord Humongous himself, and his metal codpiece, by saying, "I'll drive that tanker," which allows them to escape and create the Great Northern Colony. Miller reuses this type of hero 3 decades later with his film Mad Max Fury Road. We don't get much of a backstory, or any history between Max and Immortan Joe and the War Boys, except for that they are in mid-chase sequence the moment the film starts. Within minutes, we see the classic interceptor, My Millennium Falcon, get flipped. Say something, I'm giving up on you. Max get kidnapped by the War Boys and have a metal muzzle put on his face, and being hooked up as a blood bag for Nux. Literally, he has no agency for the first half hour of the movie, and even his decision to help the women, led by Furiosa, is based out of self-service. It isn't the threat of reprisal by Immortan Joe, it isn't the hope for a better world, it is the line, "You want that thing off your face," that leads him to join the women. He reluctantly allows them to get back onto the war rig, but not before taking out every piece of weaponry he can find in the cabin, which is a lot. However, after one of the many spectacular chase sequences in the movie, with the War Boys close on their tail and Immortan Joe driving his souped-up monster car, and the sand people-looking guys on their motorbikes guarding the mountain pass, Max begins to trust Furiosa, and the two work together to protect the war rig and the wives from the various foes in front of them. This bond grows even stronger when they find themselves in a swamp-like desert in the middle of nowhere, and the bullet farmer is bearing in on them. After going through almost all of their limited ammunition, Max cedes the final shot to Furiosa, using his back to stabilize the shot. This bond between Max and Furiosa is finalized when they decide to turn around and head back to the Citadel, and take it before Immortan Joe and his gang returns. Furiosa and the many mothers plan to make their way across the salt desert, a perilous journey with little to no hope for salvation. Then Max arrives and gives them the idea to go back the way they came. Max is an outsider to this group. He's the only male, apart from Nux, and the only one without a legitimate stake in the plan's success. But he makes it his business, and he becomes the hero that the situation needed. It is truly in keeping with Miller's idea of a hero who goes above and beyond to preserve the humanity of the group, amplified by the hero's explicit lack of connection ideologically or societally to said group. With this idea, we can infer that George Miller places higher esteem for those who show empathy, humanity, and loyalty to those who deserve it, and it is something that we must strive to become like. Even after Max returns to the Citadel with the women, and the celebration of the emancipation of the tyrannical water hoarder Immortan Joe is underway, he knows that he doesn't have a place in this world. It's not his victory. Much like the survivors in the colony during the Road Warrior, these people get a happy ending, but Max doesn't. Max just disappears into the crowd of the newly freed people and goes off on his own like a Japanese Ronin, a warrior without a master. You can see the influences of the George Miller hero from characters like the man with no name, Shane, or any of Kurosawa's films, especially Yojimbo and Seven Samurai, as they arrive from the uncivilized part of the world, fight the corrupt authorities that plague a town, and when the dust settles, they move on to their next adventure, unable to find peace in peace. Now, I know what you must be wondering. How does this Western hero relate to a talking baby pig? Well, my friends, settle in, because I'm going to tell you a secret. Babe, at least Babe in Pig in the City, is Max Rockatansky. No, I don't mean that Babe is literally a former law officer driving his car, oh my god, what did I do? Wandering a post-apocalyptic wasteland with his trusty sawed-off shotgun and interceptor in tow. I do mean these characters are the same type of hero. Babe, Pig in the City starts a few months after the first Babe left off. Babe and Arthur Hoggett are on the best of terms. Unfortunately, Babe causes a very brutal and catastrophic accident to befall Arthur while working in a well, only to have the nefarious specters of the ooky spooky bank to come calling to collect money from the farm. Esme, Arthur's wife, gets this brilliant idea to enter Babe into a show to save the farm, as the appearance fee of the glorious sheepdog pig would generate proceeds that would be able to pay off the bank. So, Babe's goal is simple: save the farm so that he can fix the relationship that he thinks he broke. And while there are others that will be affected if the farm goes under, Babe unintentionally caused this problem. So the element of being self-serving is there. He's trying to take responsibility for his actions, despite not having a single self-serving bone in his body. Babe is great. Literally, the perfect pig. So after taking the plane to Metropolis, Babe meets a drug-sniffing dog. And this fucking beagle decides that he wants a reward. So he falsely declares that Babe is smuggling drugs in his crate, precipitating a full cavity search on Esme. This movie is rated G. Missing their flight, the duo need a place to stay. So, a pig man shows up to the rescue. Seriously, the film makes a note that this person has a pig nose? I don't know what to make of it, and we'll get back to this. The pig man tells him he knows where they could stay. This leads them to a hotel filled with animals, despite there being some strict no animals rule in Metropolis in hotels. The next day, Babe gets separated from Ismay, and he wanders the hotel and meets the live-in chimpanzee family, who rope him into the circus in hopes for monetary compensation to save the farm. He gets exploited by the circus, and realizing this, he finds out that he's not going to get what he wants. But after a tragedy in the hotel, and Esme getting arrested for a hilarious mishap, the animals are left alone, including an operatic family of cats, 3 dogs that just kind of hang out together, and the chimpanzees, who live with an old orangutan named Thelonious. Babe decides that he needs to go get food, but his naivete is exploited by the chimpanzees, leading for Babe to be chased throughout the canals and the city by a bull terrier and a Doberman pinscher. After this crazy set piece, Babe falls into the river and swims away. But the bull terrier following him is still connected to a chain, which causes him to hang by his neck above a river. The chain gets stuck, which leaves the bull terrier to be drowning in the middle of this river. This movie is rated G. Now, Babe is the only one who decides to take it upon himself to save the dog, despite being a whole gaggle of other animals around, including a poodle who is very strongly insinuating some sexual abuse in her past. He saves the bull terrier, and with his new strong man behind him to back him,
whatever the pig says, goes.
A small socialist utopia is formed in this tiny hotel with neighborhood animals. Everyone gets a share of the food that was stolen by the chimps. Oh my god. That is so much worse than the last one. This is for you. I hope you enjoy this. This is for you. And while Babe is oblivious to the societal fabric being torn down from his actions, the bull terrier clearly plays it as him being part of the cadre of leaders of this revolutionary proletariat uprising. But nobody wants to hear my ramblings on Marx. Maybe you do, so let's get to it. The thing about communism is that, however, this utopia is short-lived as the neighbors from across the street decide to call the police. Fuck 12. Everyone gets taken away for apparent medical experimentation. Only Babe, a duck delivered by a pelican, and Fleelick, a disabled Jack Russell Terrier, survive the incident uncaptured. Fleelick even clutches on the pant legs of one of the people who are taking the animals away. He's still holding on to him while he's in a truck, and just take a look at this scene. This movie is rated G. Babe hatches a brilliant plan and saves everyone from medical experimentation, including Thelonious, who prefers to be clothed, and they all get a happy ending on the farm. Hell, even the chimpanzees drop their clothing and become chimpanzees. And Farmer Hoggett turns to Babe and reprises the classic line, "That'll do, pig. That'll do." So, Babe's story, which started as a simple goal with him wanting to save his farm, becomes a symbol of animal liberation and makes the lives of everyone he touched better. Even the hotel owner is living happily at the farm, despite their initially jaded worldview. And yeah, Max's cynicism ramped up to 11, while Babe is naivety ramped up to 11. It's his naivety that makes Babe such a lovable pig that transforms the world around him for the better. Why am I doing this to myself? The fact that Babe becomes a key component to free the animals from the tyrannical city life they are forced to be a part of shows exactly the type of hero that Miller prefers to write about. Other than his hero archetype, what other influences from George Miller's previous films, or entire filmography, can be seen in these two movies? The side characters have a clear George Miller hue to them. You've got the rough bad guy who's hell-bent on killing our hero only to become his fiercest ally. That's obviously Nux in Fury Road, who goes from being a faceless member of Immortan Joe's cult-like war boys, all shiny and chrome, vying for the mega highways of Valhalla, to becoming a character willing to sacrifice himself for the group that has adopted him, essentially. But it's also the Bull Terrier in Babe Pig in the City. After saving his life, the Bull Terrier becomes the force by which Babe's rule is law, and his full-on submission to this childlike pig goes so far as to offer Babe his collar, saying that it would honor him. Then there are the side characters who get very little screen time, but you know exactly who they are. With Fury Road, of course, there's the Bullet Farmer, the War Boys, who are all distinguishable despite their uniform appearance, the Canyon Biker Gang, the Porcupine Pals, and the Many Mothers, who are given full characters despite the limited dialogue they have. And with Babe Pig in the City, we get the beach scene, the judge, every animal from the singing cats to Thelonious. We get these characters and this rich, vibrant world Miller has created for this adventure. And of course, you've got the clown from Babe Pig in the City, who not only looks like the leader of Gastown, but also gets all shiny and chrome when glitter gets sprayed on his face. And the films compare surprisingly well aesthetically. The scene at the beach is pure George Miller. There's ladies in bikinis, dudes in barely any bathing suits working out, and the police officers have a little bit too much leather on them not to be part of a weird sex thing. Compare the people in the scene to the followers of Immortan Joe. Dudes in codpieces, women in very specific clothing, and you've got so much leather. Look at the chimpanzees in Thelonious. No. Really look at them. They're apes in human clothing with earrings. It's unsettling. You know what's equally unsettling? The Doof Warrior. Miller has a very specific look to his films. More unreal than you would expect. Even in a simple story of a pig has a city with a skyline that includes the Golden Gate Bridge, the Sears Tower, and the World Trade Center, all in one. And I told you I was gonna get back to this, but the pigmen. What is it about the pigmen? George, you have two pigmen in the movie. They're two different pigmen. There's the judge and the dude at the airport. Two different people. We are told that the judge who allows Esme to go was fond of pigs because he grew up on a pig farm. If you like pigs, do you grow a pig nose? Or was he fond of pigs because his dad was fond of pigs? Or his mom was fond of pigs? Is he related to pigs? This whole thing asks more questions than it answers. I don't know if I want to know the answer. This movie is rated G. Then there's the action sequences. The best action sequences ever put to film are very clear when it comes to geography and stakes. Take the opening chase sequence in Mad Max Fury Road. Behind all the fireworks and the insane camera placements, Miller focuses on characters, on revving engines, and on rolling tires. He not only wants to show you, the audience, the danger. He wants to put you right in the middle of it. And then, when thinking about G-rated movies, you wouldn't think that there would be any actual action sequences or set pieces. You might get some slapstick humor, very tame, but you wouldn't get anything that would really get your heart rate up. In Babe, Pig in the City, there's three. There's the almost Rube Goldbergian sequence set in the well. The second action set piece is the chase between Babe and the two dogs, specifically the bull terrier. He's chased around the canal, but instead of just being a prolonged chase sequence, Miller gives the audience the wavering emotions of hope and dread multiple times. We hope Babe will get away. We dread that he will be caught and possibly eviscerated by this rabid dog. And finally, there's the car chase, and it's rather self-explanatory. It's just straight up George Miller Mad Max filmmaking. That's it. That's my argument that Babe, Pig in the City is a Mad Max movie. Does there need to be some greater point to this? Some concrete answer to the question of what is George Miller auteur? Can't a guy just talk about how much he loves a movie about cars crashing in the desert almost as much, probably actually a lot more, than a movie about a lovable talking pig and his animal friends? Just, I don't know. Why did I open another one of these fucking beers? I guess I have to finish these. Be sure to like and subscribe for more of these videos. I've got more in the works, and yeah. And every time I get more likes, I'll give Ash some treats. Don't like me, like the video so Ash can get some treats.